This Monday random live that I want to talk to you about making somebody or something a big deal. And I keep seeing this more and more the trend. And the reason why I'm introducing it this way is because people tell me from this perspective, right? So my humanitarians come to me and say that this is a big deal, right? This is a big deal. And then we start getting or curious as to why it is a big deal and what's happening. So the examples that I will give you, I think I will give you three examples that I hear a lot. So one of the examples is making somebody a big deal, even though we don't want to. And that usually looks like it's a work colleague in the office, or it is a supervisee, or it is a boss that we keep struggling with, we keep wanting them to be different, or we keep uh, like um, reacting to them all the time of like we have our own agenda what to do, but then the supervisor comes along and then says that this, and then we just go and run off and do that thing, even though we didn't have that in plan, or even though we don't think that's the good idea or a right thing to do, but we still keep reacting and doing it, right? So that is one of the examples. I think in the same example, I can also add the feeling like supervisees need to hear things in a particular way and they're not hearing it, and struggling like how not to offend them. So that's like one area where we're making things so much of a big deal that we're not really focusing on doing what we want to do, basically. Another example that I see is how another humanitarian keeps saying that the head of the office or supervisor says something, a comment, and then us thinking about it the whole day and influencing our journey, like the whole day, and we keep thinking about why they said this, they shouldn't have said this, or maybe I should have done this, I should have done that. And then we keep having this sense of we wanted to do something else, but then because of that one comment, then we're all about how maybe we're not really doing the right thing and all the things, and then we get stressed or we get overthinking over it, right? That's a second example of making somebody a big deal. And then an example for a something to be a big deal is another humanitarian that I'm working with who is wanting to transition, wanting to something, doing something else, but then fearing so much about how and worrying so much about, excuse me, where the money will come from, worrying about how he will make that money and whether he will make that money and all of this, even though he really wants to prioritize his family, but because of the money situation that he's not really like he's afraid that if he transitions, then all of those things will fall apart, and then being with the family will not be an enjoyable um, time anyway, right? So these are the three examples of how we're making things such a big deal to a point that we're so afraid to do something else. In the way that the consequences of that is that we are because we're making it so much of a big deal, we're allowing it to be dominant over anything else, and it's it becomes also like some kind of an obsession and attachment that we keep thinking about it, we keep worrying about it, we allow basically it to be like over us, it's clouding or it's like defining our weather basically, while we are feeling like we can't really do anything about it, and we need to always look at what that someone says or what that thing, um depending on how, like let's say money, and then we just feel like that's the thing that defines what I can and cannot do, right? This is the consequences of it. Now, I think that human race is like meant to be making something or somebody a big deal based on love and desires. This is, I think, how we're meant to be, because whenever we're choosing things, doing things, or spending time with based on love and desire, then we feel like that time was worth spending it. We feel like that's very fulfilling. We feel like that's very satisfying, and we will feel like that's how we were meant to be doing. But because oftentimes our choices of what we make a big deal is based on fear, right? Therefore, we feel like we need to always watch out, we need to be always in vigilance, or we need to be always worried about something, we need to be making it a big deal, even though we don't want to. Like, we get into this cycle because of that fear. Now, that fear is also an attachment. Then we start attaching ourselves to my career, my work, my performance depend on the opinion of the other, right? And this is where we let other people's opinion to be so much more powerful than our own about ourselves, about our performance. So the fear is coming from some kind of a belief that says it's whatever they think is so important. So I better do everything they want to. I better do in the way that I don't receive those comments. I do it in the way that they like, even though I may not agree with it. So as you can see, that the belief always is something like we let other people's opinion to be so dominant over our own that we don't really let our opinion shine in that moment. We don't really let our truth, our of what's going on to come to the surface. And even if it does, we suppress it. And the same goes for the money, is that the money becomes so much more powerful thing that we just decrease or even suppress all of our abilities, or our trust about ourselves, or our belief about ourselves becomes so not important, not significant, and then we just make that money so much more powerful. And whenever we do that, then the consequences, as I said, is that we feel like we're so powerless. We feel like what we really want, what we really want to do, and how we want to spend our time, how we want to spend our energy, does not really depend on us, but rather depend on those things externally, or on those people externally. That's the biggest danger, biggest problem I see with making a big deal of someone or of something that we actually don't want to make a big deal. Now, it doesn't, of course, mean that we should be fighting with those people, or we should be like neglecting or ignoring those people. I'm not suggesting that, so please don't hear me wrong. But I'm just saying that as long as we keep making somebody or something a big deal based on the fear, right? Based on the fear of us not being able to do XYZ, or us not being able to do what we really want because we really depend on the other people's opinion or their comments. As long as we make a big deal based on that fear, then we will never be satisfied with our lives or with our work, because we will be always like putting them above us in some way, or putting them above our opinions basically in some way, or putting them above, or putting the money or the time or whatever thing that we're making a big deal, we're making them so much so that we feel like our abilities are not enough, or who we are and what we can do is not enough, because that thing really defines what we can and cannot do. Do you see what I'm saying? So what we really want, though, is what my clients come to me saying is what I really want is, I want the work that I love doing. At the same time, I want to have my life with my family, or with my loved ones, or create a family, right? Or create a hobby, or do something else as well. I don't want work to be that dominant thing over my life, only, because I want other things in my life as well, right? So this is really what we're wanting in the end, is we're not wanting one thing or one area of our life to be dominant over everything else. That's not what we're wanting. So we're wanting basically to have the dominance of us, who then decides what is it really what we're wanting. Basically, what I said in the beginning is we're wanting to make a big deal of things that we really believe are big deal, that we really like doing, that we really like spending time with. And it doesn't mean that within those activities there won't be occasions that we don't like, right? So I'm not suggesting that everything has to be all daisies and everything positive and everything's amazing. No, even though in the area that, excuse me, that we want to make it a big deal, like our personal life, of course there will be moments where we don't like, or there will be moments that we will be working on, but still the choice to make that, or choice to have the time, the energy, the way that we spend is based on how we want to do, and in not instead of how our worries or our fears dictate us to do, right? So that's why the question then becomes is how do we make a big deal something that we really want to, instead of keep making something a big deal that we don't want to, or keep making someone a big deal even though we don't want to, right? So how to do that and how best we can navigate it. And this is where I help my clients to look at a few things. So one of the things that we really need to look at it is what fear is making us someone a big deal. So, for instance, you may have a belief that this person or the supervisor or whoever is so important, who defines over my career, who defines over performance, or whatever, whatever. And you feel like if you bring your opinion to the surface, or you discuss your opinion with that person, or you even implement your opinion or your position of how you want things to be done, and or if you don't react to that supervisor, then you fear what happens, right? You fear something worse is going to happen, you fear like you will not get a good review or whatever, whatever. So now we need to look at it. What if you still trusted to do the things that you want to do and discuss it with the supervisor, or you did things the way that you thought was right based on the discussion with the supervisor, or you didn't react to that supervisor's request all of the time? What will happen then? What feelings will come up then, right? So probably feelings will come up of something like, oh my God, he or she's going to be mad at me. This will happen, that will happen, and your brain is likely to offer all of these worst case scenarios. And what if you just stayed in those urges of seeing the worst case scenarios, but still trusting that you know what you're doing and you know how you're going to do it? Again, I'm not suggesting that you go against the supervisor's will or whatever, right? But I'm just suggesting that trusting that you are a professional of your work, trusting that they are a professional of their work, and knowing that you still are in charge of the area that you are in charge of. So you know how to do that best, and you have consulted, discussed with the supervisor, and you went ahead, done that anyway. And if they had another opinion, and if they were not satisfied with that, or if they were not happy with that, then what if that's okay too, and you didn't make a big deal, right? Because we make something a big deal, as I said, based on two things, right? Either because we're afraid of something, or because we love something, or we are so excited about something. So if we're not afraid of something and we just allow them being unhappy being an okay thing, and us doing things the way we want to because we trust what we're doing and how we're doing it, because we really know what we're doing and being responsible for the outcome of it, then Even if in the end things don't go the way you want to, but still you have trusted your wisdom, you have trusted your professionalism, and you have trusted that you know what to do and how to do it, and you did it. And you have discussed that, of course, with the supervisor in advance, but still you have defended, stood by what you really believe is it needs to be done, and you went ahead and did it, right? So what you will gain from this is not only that you will not make the supervisors being angry or being mad or whatever as something a big deal, but rather you have decided to trust yourself and your professional opinion, and you have done things, and you have stood by what you think is the right thing to do in that moment, even though knowing and considering the supervisor's opinion. And in those moments, you can also consider that whenever you trust yourself and your opinion and you stand by it, you also follow your calendar, what you said you would do, unless it's, of course, something very emergency and extreme, which I think is not often unless you work in an emergency setting, right? So that's why if you are working in that environment and you know that you want to do these things because you find this important for what you're doing, what you're wanting in the outcome, then even though your supervisor may come up with lots of different ways to request you to do things this way and this way and this way, you always know how to prioritize. You always know how to prioritize your tasks or the supervisor's task or that he or she has given you, right? So you always put it in your calendar so you know that which one to prioritize, because you are not afraid of their opinion, you are not afraid of them being mad, or you're not afraid of them being not happy or whatever, because you know what you're doing. You believe that whatever you're doing is the right one. And you can, of course, discuss with the supervisor as to um, how you see things and how they see things, and then how the results are and what their opinions are. But still, if you are so into what you're doing, and if you're so really understanding and pro of your area, you will always know what to do with the external opinion, instead of letting the external opinion be all and I don't know what is the phrase, right? Instead of doing that, you always balance it out with your opinion and then look at them both equally and then see what to do with them. So shifting your shifting to where to put the big deal, I think, is important for that reason, is when we're not unnecessarily suffering or struggling or keep overthinking because of the opinion of someone else, for instance, right? So whenever we have our opinion and we trust our opinion so much and we know why we're thinking what we're thinking and we're doing for the good of the people we're serving, then we know where to put the big deal um, importance, right? That's what I'm really advocating for. So that is one of the things, is basically the first thing for me to help you really understand is, why are you making that person's opinion a big deal, and there might be a fear behind it, and how to work with that fear and where that fear is coming from, right? Where that fear is coming from, is it from your belief that they are more important, or they're more skillful, or more understand more wise, or more intelligent, or whatever it is. And then also getting to really get curious as to, why are you not trusting your opinion in the same lens as their opinion as well. Basically, I'm not saying that disregard their opinion, obviously, and of course you shouldn't, and I trust that you won't, but give your own opinion, your own wisdom, your own professionalism, as much wisdom as theirs, and then have a look at both of them equally with confidence to see which one you want to follow, or how the mixture of both you want to follow, and how do you want to do that. So that's one of the ways that we can achieve that level of like um, balancing fear with your confidence, with your belief, with your trust, so that fear does not dominate it, but instead that trust, that belief in you and your abilities come to the surface so high so that it dominates the fear, basically. Right. So that is one of the things that we can work on. The other thing that I really see is that people make a big deal is because of that um, the second example I gave you, where we're so tripped over one comment from someone, or where we're so tripped over uh, about one thing that didn't go right, or the mistake that we believe that we made, and therefore, like, we feel like the world is going crashing. This, I think, is so much related to how we're not recognizing our worth and how we are tying our worth to what we do. And I have seen it from my own experience of whenever basically someone said something about me that I thought is not good, I made it so much about myself and about how I'm not the good person, how I'm this, how I'm that. And that really shows how we are tying our self worth basically to what we're doing, and therefore every comment becomes so personal, so painful, that if we don't like it. So that's why in that case I would really suggest you to work on this self-worth, meaning how can you accept and feel your self-worth without tying it to what you do, without tying it to what you're doing now or ever, right? Because who you are as a person, a human being, is worthy already, and then whatever else you do is something separate. If you can achieve that, then any comment will no longer be as painful as you make it mean. Therefore, you will be spending more time focusing on how to serve those people that you want to, or how you then not really like tripped over comments or spending your weekend thinking about it, but instead spending more time intentionally on other things, like being with your loved ones, being with your friends, and all the things. So that's how you reduce it being very personal and painful about yourself, right? So I find that whenever we make everything like outside of us that's happening, where whenever we make it so personal about ourselves, then we usually are tying our self-worth to what we do, and then it becomes so difficult to untie it, because then it will feel like, I think, like, imagine we have built the house and the house is already there, amazing, and then as soon as someone said, oh, maybe the color of the house is not right, and then we start redoing everything again. This is how it feels like when I tie my self worth to something that I'm doing. Right. So this is another way to approach it. And the third way to approach it that I find where we can reduce the attachment so much is, like I keep saying, is by building really your belief in yourself, in what you're doing, and building that trust so much that you really don't let fear to be an issue, and therefore you start making a big deal of things or someone that you really want to, instead of just by default making things a big deal simply because you got scared in that moment. So that's why one of the amazing ways we can really build that trust is by really recognizing how capable we are, recognizing who we are and how capable we are and what we can do in life. That really elevates our self concept, elevates of who we are, so much so that we then don't give in to fear so much. We then really understand what fear is doing with us, and then we just decide to just process fear instead of reacting to it, instead of keep doing and making big deal of people or someone's opinion or something. Instead, we just decide what to do with it. So, in other words, for instance, if you're having the problem of money, that being a big deal, right? Fearing that where you will get the money if you transition, or whatever these things that worry keep coming up. Whenever you trust yourself and you believe in your abilities so much, that you just want to then say, I want to do things the way I love doing, or I want to make the impact the way I want to, instead of just doing things and keep doing the routine or doing things that I don't like simply because I'm afraid of making money. Because then we just become so attached to the money that we just abandon what we love doing and how we love doing things, and therefore even though we're earning money, but it will not be joyful. It will not be satisfying because we're just like earning for the sake of earning it, for the sake of supporting someone, but not really getting the fulfillment out of it. So that's why I really, really want people to, if anything, work on their self concept of being the person who can do anything they want in life, who really can create the impact they want in life, and they don't need to be attached to other people's opinions or those things outside of us, those material things outside of us, so much so that they determine what we can and cannot do, right? So that's why the advocacy that I really want to make here is making a big deal of people who you really want to be spending time with, who you really want to be building loving, fulfilling relationships, um, and making a big deal of the work that you're doing, that you really love, that you really see the impact of the result of, is I think amazing ways to spend our lives with, and then making a big deal of opinions that we don't even like, or opinions that we don't want to listen to, or opinions that we want to listen to but not in that moment, or opinions that we want to listen at the same time balance with our own opinion. Those opinions of other people, making them big deal so much, I think will just distract us what we really want to be doing and how we want to be doing the work we want to do, right? And also those type of making a big deal of things outside of us, like money or like time or other things, material things. Maybe when we make them a big deal, then we're really trying telling our brains is that we're not really capable of making them enough, so that we need to attach to what we have so far, right? So we get into the scarcity, we get into this lack mindset, and therefore we don't enjoy what we're doing and how we're doing and how we're spending our lives. So, my dears, so that's why I really want you to be very cautious and intentional about what are you currently making a big deal of, what are whose opinion are you making a big deal, or what are you making a big deal, and do you like it, and if you don't like it, then what are you going to do to shift that making a big deal focus on the things, on the people you really want to, right? So you want to work on this, absolutely come to coach with me, and I would love to help you shift that perspective of making a big deal to the ones that you really want to, getting away from you don't want to. Have an amazing week, everyone, and I will speak to you very soon.